welcome to Convicted Patriot, your source for unapologetic, common sense, conservative values. Today is January the 12th, 2026, and once again, ladies and gentlemen, never a boring news cycle. I've been very busy. I've been away for about a week now, and I apologize for that. But here is a brief summary of everything that I have in store today. I have been taking notes, so to speak. We have Tim Walsh being a victim and blaming all these other people for his problems. He even also took a very aggressive and seditious stance by basically saying that he's about to initiate the National Guard to take stance against the federal government, calling for all the other states to follow suit. Kind of sounds insurrection-y, doesn't it? Well, this week, the president deployed 2,000 federal agents into Minnesota on the tail of tens of billions of taxpayer dollars that have been scammed via the Somalian immigrant community. Well, over 1,500 of them have been arrested so far, and they have priors such as sexual offenses against children and murder. And, of course, due to the propaganda machine known as the mainstream media, a liberal white woman was shot and killed by an ICE agent. And we will get into that, as you all know how well I love to rag on the liberal white woman. Department of Health and Human Services has officially changed the mandatory childhood vaccine schedule to match, guess what? Yeah, that's right, all of the other first world countries. Yeah, this entire time, every other first world country has actually put the health of their citizens above profit and has had this new schedule that we've since adopted. No longer will the children of America be required to be pincushions of profit. I mean, that need to be injected, 80 times between the age of birth and 18? But parents, don't worry, you still have the option to do as you wish and to continue to follow the previous requirements if you want to. But please, take into account that there is a reason why we were the only first world country, developed country, that had such a colossal list, and at the same time we were, and are, the fattest, unhealthiest, and have the highest rate of autism. It has now been updated to not 1 out of 36 children, but 1 out of every 31 children born in the United States, primarily males. Trump is now pushing for a Congress to codify a law. Yeah, that'll make the housing market off limits to big corporations, allowing the middle class and Generation Z to actually have a chance back at the reality of home ownership. This could change so much for so many, but as we know, the Democratic Party would never allow Trump to have a win that easy. And being that they know how successful this would be, simply because it is common sense, we know they're going to do all they can to stop it. We have more information on Venezuela and pretty much how this is going to essentially affect all of our big so-called enemies, such as China, Russia, Iran. Not to mention the foreshadowing from what the seditious six, remember, the 6 Congress members that are former military and other various branches of military service or government agency telling our current enlisted troops that they could disobey Trump if he gave them an illegal order. Trump, Pete Hegseth, the Pentagon in general. Yes, that's called treason, and being that there is no illegal orders being given, or was there any given before that statement was made? It was just said just to say it? No, I think it's because they were terrified, because they knew Maduro was in the crosshairs, and Maduro knew way too much that could burn the whole house of cards down. Well, I think it's safe to say, after the blatant admission, and you got to respect it from Trump, that we're going to go in there, get their oil, install a new leader. You know, we've already got somewhere between 50 and 70 million barrels. And apparently Trump is going to use that not only to help America, but to get the people of Venezuela at least somewhat an ounce of respect and dignity that they reserve. I mean, I think it's safe to say that this country has now moved on from being a republic, though. I mean, we're finally admitted an empire, which we have been since the end of World War II, but at least now it's admitted. And I don't think many people really are informed of how history shows us what happens once this happens. We basically watch Congress dissolve and become irrelevant while the majority of the power goes to the executive branch, the executive himself. And I'm not sure if we're ready for elections to be that heavy and power to be that isolated, especially at the helm of the most powerful country on the planet. I mean, I suppose it's about time we get started with the news today. Let's start with Tim Walsh. So Walsh, who came dangerously close to the vice presidency, has pretty much been an idiot since he came on the national scene. From lying about his valor and time in service, from pretending to know his way around a simple break barrel shotgun. This man has been the picture perfect emasculated white man that has no sense of manhood nor authority. Not about him at all, and his soft ass has allowed Minnesota to be invaded and taken over by Somalians that have managed to rake taxpayers for over $10 billion. And that's as it sits right now. But though a number of different welfare scams, they have managed to do this. This has been in the spotlight. He's had it on him for weeks now, and whistleblowers just keep coming out left and right, coming out the woodworks, man, saying that they personally notified Walsh or his office and were told to look the other way. And they even retaliated against a few of them that chose not to turn the other way. So naturally, Walsh would embrace a George Floyd 2.0. Ironically enough, it's in the same city that George Floyd happened. And well, I mean, is it ironic? Actually, never mind. Well, because that would mean that the news doesn't have his name in the headlines, or at least for his own behaviors, for however long the story lasts. And if riots ensue, then he has a nice breather. I mean, you want to know some fun facts about Tim Walsh? Did you know the homicide rate in Minnesota has increased over 50% since he has taken office? And he's also more recently been bashed for his sanctuary policies, allowing some 470 convicted murder, rapists, and pedophiles to return to the streets with no bail because they're illegals. You know, holding the illegals accountable is racist. So Walsh is just the perfect half-wit beta male for the job. When you need a moronic fall guy, that is, that's greedier than he is smart. So in the end, the scammers, they come up with billions, and at the worst, they have to go back home to Somalia to spend it, and Walsh gets his reputation, his career, and his legacy ruined. Goes more than likely into the sunset without much of a golden parachute, and probably no charges because he's a Democrat and he's a politician, and that just doesn't happen. Well, he knows this, though, which is why he decided this week call off his campaign and pull himself from the next governor race. And he's pretty much gathered that all this is slowly coming out. And once it all comes out, he'll be crucified. But even more so if he's in a political race. And he's actually had the gall to blame this on a 23-year-old journalist that took the time to go from daycare to daycare and pretend like he wanted to find one for his son. His name was Nick Shirley. And in doing this, he actually caught on tape. Building after building after building, posing to be, looking for child daycare for his son. But these daycares, they had no children. They had no business at all, which are somehow simultaneously bringing in tens of millions, if not hundreds in some case, of federal grant money. So Walsh blames his kid. And of course he blames Trump because that's the entire neoliberal playbook. Stop Trump, blame Trump, shame Trump, And as if things couldn't get any better for Walsh's plan, last week a federal agent shot and killed a 37-year-old white woman. And that's right. It's easy to guess that she was a neoliberal brainwashed white woman that fell victim to the left-wing propaganda along with the mainstream media, which is one and the same. And I mean, a lot of people are really up in a bunch about this, and it's a serious matter, of course. And liberal or not, I do not, let's get this clear, I do not think that she needed to die. Neither did Ashley Babbitt deserve to die on January 6th, but none of you people were screaming and whining about it then. The thing is, actions have consequences, and Ashley Babbitt and Renee Good were, to my knowledge, both grown women who knew better. They knew better, and that's the thing. See, I don't think murder is acceptable for much of anything outside of pedophilia and rape. And I don't also agree with demonizing the agent. I mean, let's look at the facts for a second. The ones that matter, And trust and believe, I've had my fair share of run-ins with law enforcement, and I am no warrior for them neither. But north is still north. Renee Good, the perpetrator, not the victim, although I guess she is a victim. She's a victim to the brainwashing of the neoliberal agenda. I hope you all know, all you politicians and mainstream media hacks, that this woman's blood is quite indeed on your hands. You were the ones that pushed her to believe that federal agents were Gestapo or Nazis or fascists or any of these other fucking terrible rhetorical claims that you call them. These names that you just throw on people because you're full of hate. You're full of misery. And you just project your negative energy onto people that genuinely are just regular people. Well, see, this woman, because of this left-wing bullshit machine, well, she was confirmed to have been stalking ICE agents throughout the entire day and interfering with their jobs. She appeared to be the organizer of the Liberal Brigade and the lead car. So when these ICE agents finally they got stuck in the snow, and that's when she decided to make her move when they were trying to push their vehicle out of the ice, is when she blocked them in again. And when she was finally confronted, is when this shooting took place. Now, for all the discussions that have taken place over this, please, I'm going to ask you to take your emotions out of this and use your common sense. This same officer, just a few months ago, was ran over, and drugged by an illegal Guatemalan pedophile that he was trying to arrest. He was severely injured, and just days before this, got the last of his stitches removed from this case. Well, when he approached Miss Good's vehicle, regardless of the words that they shared back and forth, the woman's wheels were facing the cop and she slammed on the gas. Now, if it wasn't for the weather conditions of that day, if the roads weren't icy, causing those tires to lose traction and spin, then that officer would have been mush. He was indeed hit by her vehicle and did not draw his gun nor fire until after she dumped on the gas and lurched in his direction with the tires spinning. I'm sure PTSD is real for this officer also, but there are several angles of this incident now, not the ones that the news is circulating on the propaganda to propagate a certain response, And in slow motion, you can see either where their vehicle strikes him and pushes him backwards, or he's moonwalking with both feet at the same time. Less than a year, assaults on ICE agents have went up 1,300%. Vehicular attacks have gone up 3,200%. And death threats have gone up 8,000%. In the same day as this shooting, there were 3 other vehicular attacks on federal agents. And this is just as common now as someone smoking weed on a street corner. It's just a normal outlier that happens more so than not. And as a response to this, Walsh has said, and he has given notice to prepare the National Guard of Minnesota, and he's had them in training to be deployed if the federal forces do not leave the state. Even in an audacious way, he pled to the other states who currently have federal forces in them to stand up with him or them. And this is obviously a call for an insurrection against the federal government, which is treason. There were many old women at the Capitol charged for simply praying or gathering. Do we not see what is going on here? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a demand for a civil war against a legal operation being carried out by the federally ran organizations, which has direct orders from the President of the United States and the backing of the vast majority of the American people. Tim Walsh, he's oblivious that he is part of the minority. What has been happening under his watch was complete chaos. Marxism by fraud, a redistribution of wealth to an illegal population, or a deceptive one in the least. Now, let's touch on Venezuela. We've all heard the left screaming war, 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 like there's a war going on. And while there is absolutely no underlying signs of any enemy force gathering or amping up for a war, the United States military did just get an extra $500 billion added to their budget. And it seems that our military is readying themselves for some type of buildup. Now, of course, we can all come at Trump for promising no new wars and then doing something so bold and what seems to be arrogant until you dissect it. Now, it was actually brilliant. This whole peace through strength thing, it doesn't work if you don't flex and remind those around you that you're the biggest player in the game. And let me just give you a quick rundown of how this happened. Bombs were dropped at 2 a.m. Maduro was captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, from a military-protected compound at 3 a.m. Trump held a press conference in Mar-a-Lago in Florida at 11 a.m., and by lunchtime that very same day, he was running Venezuela. We are undoubtedly the only country that could pull off an operation like this without the loss of one American life. I mean, it was flawless. And it should strike and induce fear into the heart and minds of this country's enemies or wannabe enemies, because this was not only a one of a kind mission that was flawless, but it was deeply strategic. See, here are some things that you probably don't know because it's not being reported. It doesn't support the mainstream narrative of some crazed madman with power that decided to go against all discretion and just go up in and snatch another country's leader because they didn't see eye to eye. See, if you really believe that this operation was that shallow, then you just need to stay out of the political field. Go back to gardening or reading romance novels or making TikToks or whatever the hell else you were doing, your energy, your time was going for, before you decided to be an adult and care about the real world around you. You see, history has a way of repeating itself. And right now in this world, we are going through the same type of cultural phenomenon that we went through during the Spanish Civil War or the Bolshevik Revolution. You know, you have these unapologetic Marxists, sound familiar, that are in this country brainwashing people via emotion, creating this terrible image and rhetoric around the federal government simply because they hate the leader that runs it. These are just everyday normal people. Yeah, they put on a uniform. They go to work to provide for their families. The procedure, the operations, everything they carry out, they're legal. And they were mandated upon them via the president, a.k.a. the American people's vote. If you look at the polling, even now, and I don't much trust polls, but none of them show a result where the majority of the American people are not on board with mass deportations, especially after the Somalian fraud that just took place. I mean, with all due respect, and to be blunt, it is just what it is. This is a cancer in our country. And as long as we allow the spread to continue, we're going to be ushering in the collapse of this country. I mean, from our economy to our culture, this country has been browbeaten into being ashamed of its heritage, of its legacy, and of the country's origins, man. Like the white European settlers, oh, such bad people. No, I mean, but they came to this country and they built what exists today, from the blueprints of the entire government to the most lucrative cities known to man, such as New York City, for instance. The United States is the most powerful country and almost always has been, maybe since the end of the First World War, but definitely, absolutely, since the end of the Second World War, which is, back to what I said earlier, when the true transformation from a republic into an imperial dynasty happened. You see, the people of Venezuela have been celebrating in droves since the capture of Maduro, and there are countless videos all over the internet to prove this. They're used to torture, death, having no freedom, no medicine, no access to health care, anything. Couldn't even speak. Any mention of disappointment regarding the previous dictatorial regime, it led to them never being seen again, man. Maduro did not give his people any breathing room after Hugo Chavez, and in fact, it may have gotten worse in some ways. And even though they have been proven to have the largest oil reserve in the world, this man was simply just getting richer, while his people literally starved to death. I mean, the infrastructure's falling apart, the refineries are half-assed, they're barely getting much in as it is. But to have the largest oil reserve and to let your people starve is just insane. And Maduro was a monster. But there's much more to this story. It's not just Maduro. This was by definition not a regime change. Because, I mean, being that Maduro stole the 2024 elections, apparently not just in Venezuela, but the United States too, which was another move made by Trump to finally get solid proof. He wasn't their rightful leader. Okay, so in fact, this administration did realize from our past mistakes of regime changes to gut the entire leadership would be a mistake. So they left it intact for the most part with the vice president in charge. We'll see how long that lasts. What I can tell you is that 8 million Venezuelans fled during Maduro's regime, and the United States has always had this policy they follow, like invade and invite. Which is how we got so many Haitians and Somalians and Afghanis, etc. But this time around, we actually intend to help all the Venezuelans that have fled to the United States resettle back in their homeland, where many of them are actually ready to go back to anyway. So while the left loses their ever-loving minds over the capture of such an evil man, they must seem to forget that many before Trump wanted to see this man's downfall. Biden placed a $25 million bounty on his head, and even people like Chuck Schumer prayed for his downfall in public. on national TV. Many reasons are behind this, though, like I said earlier, other than Maduro personally. China and Russia have an extremely strong foothold in the Western Hemisphere due to their relationship with Venezuela. You see, Russia has had a tendency to do things like prop up dictators to gain their political leverage. They support them after their rise, and they load them up with money to finance their campaigns and fund their agendas, and they provide them with security and weapons and political protection. And earlier last year, when Assad fell, for instance, Russia lost their foothold in the Middle East because they had done the exact same play with Syria, which is where they had the Tartus port. And that was their access into the Caribbean, but that's now lost. I mean, excuse me, the Mediterranean. That is now lost. And let's not ignore how destabilized Iran is becoming, which is another Russian project, by the way. And now they've lost Maduro, too. Along with him, all the money that came from their oil. You see, the oil production would be used to fund Russian interests, and it would work out for everyone because Venezuela had such a huge and widespread sanction on their crude oil from the United States. So Russia is losing its grip in the Middle East, in Latin America, and what business partners they do have left are pretty unstable. Don't forget that when Putin came in, he stripped all the oligarchs and cast them out. And so they're going into 2026 burning up oil reserves faster than they can manage because of the war they refuse to let go of. They're losing influence left and right. Dictators they have backed are falling like flies. Cash pipelines are closing. Oil refineries are getting hit. The shadow fleet got hit. And if Maduro can fall. So, this move took a massive chunk out of Russia. Little one out of China, hurt him, got him out of the Western Hemisphere, that's for sure, but it took a huge chunk out of Russia, and that's good timing. When you're looking for leverage to end a war, that the side that's clearly winning doesn't want to give up much to end the bloodshed is, that's just, that's what's going on, and this country is finally, the United States that is almost undoubtedly shifted into an evident imperial dynasty, and I'm not sure, like I said, if we are ready to give that much power to the executive and at the same time strip the legislative. And if you recall, just let's say Rome, during this period of their shift, the Roman Senate had a very familiar loss of respect and integrity, same as the United States Congress is having today. No one cares much about what any of them think because the majority of them do the bidding of their donors and their donors only. They forget the reason why they really went into Washington to begin with. But, ladies and gentlemen, the Republic is dead. Anyway, thank you for listening to me tonight. My name is Christian Russ. God bless you all, and God bless America.